Great. We're just about to hit 100, so I think it's a good time to kick off. Um, Welcome, everyone. My name's Rachel Huxley, and I'm the head of mitigation in the Climate and Health Research Programme at the Wellcome Trust. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you all together with the University of Alberta and the team there. We're co-hosting this webinar, and we're thrilled to have you all with us. So whatever time zone you're joining from, thank you for taking the time to come and hear more about this really important topic. So because of the number of participants, we don't have a chat function. We're sorry about that, but we do have the Q&A function. So please, as we go through, do use that function. And I'll just start with a really quick intro, and then we'll dive into the kind of details and the panel discussion. So I'm particularly thrilled, and I know Sherry and the team at the University of Alberta are as well, really pleased to be co-hosting this webinar to support you all as health experts to get involved with the review of the IPCC Special Report on Climate Change in Cities. And it's incredibly important that we input into this process. The climate crisis is a health crisis. So as folk in the health field, we really can't ignore what's going on in the climate change space. It impacts every aspect of our health. And health evidence, therefore, is an absolutely critical part of the special report on cities. Now, my background, I've been at Wellcome Trust for 2 years in the climate and health team, but prior to that, I spent 8 years with C40 Cities, which is a climate leadership group of around 100 cities across the globe. So I know firsthand how important it is in terms of the decisions that cities make and the actions that cities take on climate, or that they don't take on climate, and how important these are for our health, from urban planning decisions to decisions around transport and energy, green space and food. All of these decisions that cities are making in all of the various departments that are within their jurisdiction have a huge impact on how we move, eat, breathe in a city, and that has huge implications for our health. So we felt was particularly important that we supported and enabled and encouraged health experts to participate in this review of the first order draft of the special report on cities. And as you'll hear, we hope you'll agree with us that it's a really easy and straightforward thing to participate in. And we're hoping that at the end of this, you'll all go away and able to do that. I think the other thing that's really important, and I wanted to outline at the start, is that the folk who are involved in this process, I mean, some of them have health expertise, but the majority are climate and city experts. And we want to really lean in and help them and support them in this process. We've heard anecdotally that there are some views that there's perhaps not health literature and health evidence in the city space. We've also heard that people are finding it really difficult to find it if they're looking for it. They're much less familiar with this literature, and they don't have the time and the capacity, as you know. Well, maybe you don't, but IPCC authors are usually very stretched and working hard across a whole range of important topics already. So we really wanted to lean in and support them to help understand the health evidence that was out there. And we can do that with all of you participating in the review. So I think that's everything I was going to say. I suppose actually the last thing, and you'll hear this again from others on the call, is that the review process is a really important point at which to help support the IPCC process. So it really matters and it really counts. So without further ado, I'll introduce Sherilee Harper from the University of Alberta. Sherry, I'll just hand straight over to you to introduce yourself.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thanks so much. And thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. I'm going to try and share my slides. All right, Rachel, can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Just want to make sure.
My, yes,
Oh, perfect. Thank you
my
so
connection.
much.
So I can see, and I've got, yeah, great. That's it. Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, yeah, thanks so much everyone for joining us today for this really important webinar. I'm Sherilee Harper. I'm a professor at the University of Alberta in the School of Public Health and a Canada Research Chair in Climate Change and Health. And I'm also one of the vice chairs for Working Group 1. And so what I wanted to do was just walk you through a very short introduction to the IPCC and also how to become a reviewer. And then we'll transition to the panel discussion where you'll hear some tips and tricks about how to be a useful reviewer. So first, what is the IPCC? The IPCC is a UN organization that sits under the World Meteorological Organization and the United Nations Environmental Program. And the IPCC's mandate is to assess the scientific literature on climate change. But there's also all of these sort of like secondary things that the IPCC aims to do within this stated mandate, including things like traceability of key statements in the report to the scientific evidence, creating an inclusive and respectful working environment, being policy relevant but not policy prescriptive, and so on. And over the years, IPCC's made some really important contributions to the climate change negotiations under the UNFCCC, including the Paris Agreement and the first global stocktake. So the IPCC reports are this really great example of the science policy interface. So the seventh assessment cycle, it started just a couple of years ago. And we're moving along at quite a pace. So we have these different reports that you see on the screen are different products that we're going to deliver in the seventh assessment cycle. They include the special report, which we're talking about today, a couple of different methodology reports for the TFI, the usual Working Group 1, Working Group 2, and Working Group 3 assessment reports, as well as technical guidelines for assessing climate change impacts and adaptation. And of course, we'll end the cycle with the synthesis report. And so today we're really focusing on the special report, but I also wanted to mention that IPCC also hosts a number of expert workshops and expert meetings throughout the cycle. So stay tuned and keep your eyes open for opportunities to participate in any of those. This is the 10 steps that we go through to create the reports. So it starts with a scoping meeting where experts and different representatives from around the world come together to create the report outlines. The reports outlines are then approved by the government panel. Governments and observer organizations nominate authors. The authors are selected. Then the authors start working on the report. There are 2 rounds of public peer review and government review, and then a final round of government review. And then it goes, the summary for policymakers is drafted during that time, and then it goes through a line-by-line approval session with the member states. So this is where we're at for the city's report. We've done the scoping, the governments have approved the outline, authors have been nominated and selected, and they've been working on drafting the report. And so right now, we're just about to open the first order draft expert review period. So I sort of alluded to this, but the IPCC government structure includes the government panel. So that's the sort of like the policy or governance side of the IPCC. And then we have the working groups and the scientists and experts, which sort of compose or comprise the scientific part. And the city's the city's special report is a collaboration between all 3 of the working groups. So Working Group 1, Working Group 2, and Working Group 3. And Working Group 2 is taking the lead on the report. There's also a number of different authors who are contributing to the report. And hopefully all of you will also sign up to be an expert reviewer. So the city's special report, what does that look like? There are 5 different chapters. Chapter 1 sets the stage and frames the report. That's where you can expect to see different definitions or concepts defined that will carry through the report it does really important stage setting. Chapter 2 is where we start to see cities discussed in the context of changing trends, challenges, and opportunities. Then in chapter 3, we start to pick up on actions and solutions to reduce urban risks and emissions. Chapter 4 then shifts to focus on facilitating and accelerating change. And then chapter 5 presents different solutions by city types and regions. And I think for me, a take-home message is that health content is really critical in all of these chapters. There's different places where health can fit in and be part of this important assessment. So how to get involved in the IPCC? There are three main ways. The first is to contribute to the existing literature base. So if you're a researcher, now is a really great time to try and publish papers related to health and cities in general. So if you've been working on a publication or thinking about publications for a while that has something to do with cities, now is a really great time to get that into publication so that it can be assessed by the IPCC authors and feed into this report, which hopefully will then translate into some sort of decision making in the UN space. You can also be an author or a review editor. This process for the cities report is already underway. So there's also an opportunity to be a contributing author potentially if they need more authors, but that window has sort of have closed. And then finally, you can participate as an expert reviewer. And there's two different times when you can be an expert reviewer. The first is right now for the first order draft, and the second is going to be this summer in the Northern Hemisphere for the second order draft. Serving in the role of a review expert as an expert reviewer is really incredibly important and really helps shape the report. So why serve as an IPCC reviewer? First of all, as scientists, we all know that peer review is incredibly important to producing something that's rigorous and something that's really helpful for end users at the end of the day. The IPCC peer review process is incredibly rigorous and it's incredibly transparent. It's interesting because I find often that people, even people who use the IPCC reports, might not realize that the IPCC reports are actually peer reviewed. And so during this peer review phase, the peer review is open to literally any expert who has any expertise in climate change around the world. And thousands of expert reviewers sign up to engage as part of this process. Now, all the authors have to respond to every single one of the peer review comments that are made. And the peer review comments, as well as the author's responses, are all available online when the report is published. So it's not only a rigorous process, but the review process is also very transparent. The reviews also really help shape the reports. I don't think that I had really realized this before I was an author in AR6 about how important these reviews are. And as an author on two reports in AR6, I really saw how the peer review comments really shape the report. So quite substantial revisions are made between the first order draft and second order draft and the final government document. These reviews are really, really important. So if you're wondering whether this is worth your time in terms of investing energy and input into the process, I can say it definitely is because the review comments are taken very seriously. It's also a great opportunity to gain valuable IPCC experience or get sort of an insight into the process. You also don't have to read the whole report to be a reviewer. So you don't have to review all 5 chapters. You can review one of the chapters or a specific topic across the chapters. So you're not committed to reviewing the entire report if you sign up. You're also recognized, you're named as an expert reviewer in the final report. So you do get credit and recognition for your contribution. And this is what that looks like. So if you were to sign up to be a reviewer at the end of the report, there's a list of all of the expert reviewers and their affiliations. And this is the transparency part of the process. When the report is published, you can download all of the peer review comments and all of the author's responses to each of those comments as part of the report's publication. So next, I wanted to quickly cover how to become a reviewer. So hopefully you'll all do this today. You'll sign up to be a reviewer. There's two different ways. You can sign up as an individual, and that way is probably most familiar to most people. So you can review the report as an individual. So you just submit your name into the system and fill out the paperwork, and you can sign up and review the report as an individual. The second way is to review it as a group. And this is a good option for maybe groups of people or consortiums or a team of researchers or student groups. So you can sign up as a group to review the report, and you enter in all of your group members' names. So even if you complete a group review, all of your individual names of that group will be acknowledged in the final report. And as a group review, you compile all your comments together and submit them as a group. So the timelines, and these are important timelines. And Alexis, if you could copy and paste those into the chat, that would be amazing. So you can register as a peer reviewer anytime now. It's already opened. It opened on September 17th. And the registration ends November 30th. Then you have to download the draft report. It will be available for download starting October 17th. And then the review period closes December 12th, and that's a hard deadline. So you basically download the report, download the reviewer form to fill out, and then submit your comments by December 12th. This is what the form looks like to fill out. This is from an old report, but things have not changed that much. Basically, it's an Excel file, and you enter the chapter that your review comment is pertinent to, and you put in your comment. So each comment gets a separate row in the Excel sheet, and then you upload this Excel sheet to the IPCC portal. And that is an overview of the process. So now I'm really excited to quickly move into the panel phase of our discussion. That's a little bit about the IPCC. We talked a little bit about how important the concept of health and health assessment is for the city's report. And now what we'd like to do is hear from other people and get their insights on how to be an effective and helpful reviewer. So Alexis, I think you're facilitating this, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sherry. Yeah, so thanks for giving us this great overview of kind of what to expect, what makes a good expert reviewer, things like that. So yeah, I'm really excited because we have some great minds in the room today to give us some reflections on how to be a really effective expert reviewer. So we have the privilege of hearing from Kristie Ebi, who has plenty of experience in this realm. And we also have Sherine here as well from the IPCC Technical Support Unit. And then we will also be hearing some reflections again from Sherry. So yeah, first, maybe I'll call on Chris. Do you mind giving us a quick sort of introduction on your experience within the IPCC and some reflections on what you find is like how to be a really effective expert reviewer and kind of your reflections on that. So I'll pass it to you, Chris.
Thank you. I'll start with each chapter doesn't have enough authors. That the author teams are pretty limited, and there's very few health authors across this report. And you have the opportunity to really strengthen the health messages in the report. As Sherry said, you don't have to review the whole report. You don't have to review whole chapters. You can search through and review the sections where you've got expertise. Good review comments are specific. This is exactly what you could do to strengthen this message. It's always a challenge for the authors to do as comprehensive a literature review as is required. So here's some suggested papers that you could cite that would support specific points in the health sections. You can also look at the non-health sections to see if there's ways to get more health into those. And so just think of this as a way to help the author team to make the report as strong as possible. The less helpful comments are things like grammar. All of that will ultimately be fixed. A lot of people really spend a lot of time going through and fixing the grammar. There'll be another round of review, and then there'll be another check. So don't worry too much about that. Really focus on the key messages. And when you do so, think about the audience, which is national focal points, and ask yourself, is there too much text on a particular issue? Should they shorten it? Is there not enough text on other issues? Are there issues missing altogether? And so you're both taking a broad overview of the content, as well as providing specifics about, as I said, papers that could be cited. Remember that all of the review comments become public after the publication of the report. There'll be a database that anybody can go to, and believe me, people go to those databases and they look at all the review comments because the authors are required to take your comments into consideration. That doesn't mean they necessarily have to do exactly what you suggest, but they have to consider it. And their response will detail why they did or did not. They may think that the paper is not relevant. They may think that the paper is just perfect. They really appreciate it. They missed it. So the comments will be fairly specific about what they did. And you should keep that in mind as you're writing your comments. I was going to make one other comment. I forgot what it is at the moment. But yes, it's just super valuable for the authors to have you do this. And the other point I was going to make is that many of you will have papers somewhere in press. And if you have something in press, the review comments will not become public until after the report is published. And you can alert the authors that you have a paper that you're hoping is going to be accepted by some date that would be useful for the chapter. And please do let them know. There will be a point in time, the literature cutoff date, at which point the authors will be emailing you of, I need either a DOI number or a volume and page. And if I can't get one or the other of those, then the material will have to be removed from the report. But it is a way to help make sure the report is as up to date as possible. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chris. That's very helpful. Maybe I can pass it on to Sherine, if that's okay, just to kind of give maybe a brief introduction of your role and just some sort of general reflections on, what is most helpful during this expert review process. What kind of comments are helpful, which are not as helpful. Can I pass it to Sherine? Are you there?
Yes, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to see all the interest. My name is Sherine El-Wattar, and I am the Science Network Officer of the Working Group 2 Technical Support Unit. This role is new for the IPCC and for Working Group 2. Typically, it wasn't there, so this is the first time for it to happen. And the most important point of it is to make sure that the report, when it's published, it is relevant to the stakeholders that are not necessarily part of the author teams or were in the vice chairs, the bureau, etc. And so with the special report on cities and the fourth order draft on the table, this review process was incredibly important for us to encourage stakeholders to step in and to leave their comments. And that is why I wanted to refer back to what Kristie said about the fact that author teams do not have everything and do not have everyone. It is a specific number of people that have been nominated by focal points, even, and this is a list of a large number of people, yes, but the Bureau has to go through all these profiles and to select. And naturally, when you select a specific number of people, there is levels of expertise and ranges of knowledge that do not get included. And that is natural in any process that requires some sort of selection and limited number of people involved. By such, that's why your presence is super important, because the input you bring will always be unique. You do not only represent health experts or an expert under a finance expert or a law expert. You are representing your unique path that took you to this moment and the expertise and knowledge that you've acquired through your experiences. And that is why, moving on to what kind of comments are important, try to avoid highlighting that a word, for example, is missing an I, or this word is spelled a different way, or a comma should be here, or a semicolon should be there, because the report will automatically pass by an editorial phase in the end. And so all of these mistakes or issues will be fixed. What we would like you to dedicate your brain power to is actually content-wise. What is the report trying to say? You need to look at the report from the eye of the author to be able to review it properly. And if you look at the report, it has 5 chapters. These 5 chapters should be trickling down to each other or kind of leading to each other. So concepts that have been mentioned in chapter 1, have they mentioned in the same way in chapter 5? Is there consistency? Or has there been a concept that suddenly appeared in chapter 3 that's relevant to you, and you feel like it should have been expressed a bit more clearly in chapter 1 as well, to give it a bit of, like a warm-up. Another concept that we like to mention a lot is the traceability. Tracing the message and the finding that you have found. If you look at, of course, the IPCC has its specific language, the confidence and the likelihood, and there is a guideline online on that. But when you're reading the report and you find something that is with high confidence or with a certain level of likelihood, you need to check with yourself, have I seen a traceable track to this fact? Or to this piece of information? Can I trace back where the introduction and the information that led to this conclusion are? Or am I feeling a bit lost and I feel like it came out of nowhere? So as you can see, as I'm telling you, the process of reviewing is mostly about asking yourself questions of whether you understand the report sufficiently or not. So I would encourage, and we do encourage our partners and stakeholders, when you're reading the report, you will be overwhelmed. So it's good in the beginning to actually check the outline of the report, which could be found on the IPCC website, to know what are the 5 chapters, and you will find under each chapter there are bullet points that are supposed to be the topics each chapter covers. So you can check these and decide among yourself what are the main chapters that are of interest to you, because you do not need to review the whole report. You can review a chapter or a section inside a chapter, and that is it. So you can find your space, the part you would like to review, and when you go there, ask yourself questions. If I were the author, what would I have covered? If I were not the author, and now I'm just reading it as a reader, can I trace it to the other parts of the sections that I did? Is it up to date to the information I already know exists? And this critical thinking, I believe, will be the biggest gain out of the review. So do not be scared of actually highlighting, no, this section is good, but it's missing global South perspectives, or it's missing practitioner reality, or it's missing the up-to-date information. This is exactly what we need. And if you have specific publications that you see could help certain sections, as has mentioned, you can put the DOI, you can put the publication, but also try to avoid only putting your own publications. This is not very, objective. And the authors as well need to find a justification for the publication. So try to, when you share these, to have like a bit of a guide, maybe which page in the research you find interesting. This is what comes to mind, Alexis, and we also welcome further questions if needed. Back to you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing, and so helpful. So I'm noticing there's some questions coming into the Q&A, which is perfect. And I encourage you to ask questions as they come up, because that will be the next kind of phase of this meeting. So please ask any questions in that Q&A chat function. And in the meantime, I'm happy to pass it over to Sherry to give any kind of additional reflections about expert reviewing. So yeah, passing it off to Sherry.
Excellent, thanks. So first, I just wanted to echo everything that's been said already. Some really great tips so far. I wanted to share 4 ideas with you. One is that I think when we peer review something, we often point out all the things that we don't like or we want to see changed. But in the IPCC review, it's also really important to comment on things that you liked and that you thought were good, because space or sort of like real estate in the reports is really, really precious. There's not a lot of pages allocated for the reports, and you have to cover a ton of different topics. And so every single time the report goes through a round of edits, different sections, different paragraphs, different points of assessment are essentially on the chopping block. And so if a section gets a lot of negative comments or negative feedback, that would be an obvious candidate to exclude. Likewise, if another section doesn't get a ton of comments, it could be a signal to the authors, for example, that maybe that's not like such an important section and maybe it can be shortened. So if you see a section that's done really well or covers a really important topic, it's really also important to indicate that, because it gives the signal to the authors that they're on the right track and to keep that in there. Don't remove that when they're trying to shorten the pages. So that's number 1, is also comment on the things you like, not just the things that you don't like. The second thing I wanted to comment on are the figures. So IPCC figures are iconic. I remember even as a grad student how I used them in my presentations. At the city's level, the city that I live in, the city of Edmonton, the municipality, every time they give a presentation, they open the presentation with IPCC figures to sort of set the stage on the science and say, this isn't up for debate, and they use it to stage set. So figures are super important. And so pay attention to the figures. They'll be in the early phases of what they look like. But if there's opportunities to add health in or to clarify a figure, providing that feedback early on is really important to help the authors and the graphic design artists come up with really strong figures. So pay attention to the figures. That's my second point. My third point is that health is really key to this report. If you're a researcher and you're doing research in this space, then you have lots to contribute in terms of the assessment and the research side of things. If you're in the health sector, and you're a health practitioner, or you like work in government spaces, then your perspective is also really helpful, because you'll be really familiar with the people who will hopefully be using the report. And so making sure the information that you need to have in the report is included in there. And governments are looking for this. I was really impressed, maybe surprised, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was surprised when I went to my first government panel meeting by how many government interventions were related to health, and how much different countries around the world want to see more health assessment in IPCC reports. It comes up at every panel meeting. It's definitely a key topic. But because it's a key topic, the health assessment has to be incredibly rigorous, because it will be challenged by governments, because governments want the best evidence. And so the health assessment, they're looking for it, but it also has to be really strong and robust. Because they're looking for it, it has to be done, I think, extra well. And then the fourth thing I wanted to comment on was the idea of the group review. I feel like this is definitely not an uncommon mechanism in IPCC, but I think it's a really valuable one. And so in AR6, for the health chapter and working group 2, I helped organize a student group at my university where students could come together and talk about that chapter and do the review together. And it was so cool then, as an author, to then go to the next lead author meeting and hear people talking about the comments that the University of Alberta students group were making, because those discussions really feed into things. So if you're a student, or maybe if you're running a lab and you have a group of students, or you're teaching a course, this is a really great opportunity to give early career professionals an opportunity to provide like real world experience or gain real world experience and provide real world input into a really important process. So those are the 4 things that I wanted to mention today. Thanks, Alexis.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sherry.
And Sherry, would you address one of the questions in the chat? It's about recommending non-peer-reviewed literature.
Yeah, and actually, Chris, I'm really curious to hear what your experience is too. I would say that IPCC always prioritizes peer-reviewed literature for sure, but gray literature or non-peer-reviewed literature is you can use it, like you can cite it as an author. With two comments on that though. One is that it has to be available, so the authors have to provide that report to the TSU so that it's available to governments. So all of the information has to be accessible to the people who are using the report. So because most peer-reviewed literature is indexed, it's easy to access, it's archived, but sometimes gray literature might be removed from a website or something like that, and then it's not accessible anymore. So you have to submit the copy of the paper or the report to the IPCC. And then the second thing is that the authors still have to assess it. So it still has to be high quality science or evidence that it's contributing. But yeah, Chris, I don't know if you wanted to comment more on that, on what that's like in practice. But technically, yes, gray literature is allowed as long as it's high quality and accessible.
It's high quality, it's accessible, and it's relevant. So for example, in one of the reports, in one of the chapters for the Full Up Working Group 2 assessment, there was an assessment of the impacts of climate change on ski resorts. And numbers, specific numbers for how many workers were affected, they had to reduce their workforce, they had fewer skiers. Those kinds of numbers actually came from a newspaper because they wouldn't be in a peer-reviewed paper. And so, yes, there are instances where non-peer-reviewed information is included in the report, but the authors are really cautious about doing that because that is often objected to by some of the governments who want to see that everything has been peer-reviewed. And so they do consider carefully about the kinds of reports. If you don't know, quite a few years ago, there was an event where email was accessed and resulted in reform of the IPCC, which I was heavily involved in. And this was one of the big questions that came up because authors had taken information from secondary sources that were not verifiable and frankly were not high quality science. There's a couple questions in the chat. Alexis, could you put in the link to the report so that people can look at the outline of it? And
Maybe
it looks like some people joined late, and so they missed the link to where they can register.
Yes, I can share both of those things for sure. Thank you.
And
So
I will, sorry, there's quite a lot of comments here about I have this expertise. All expertise is relevant. From my perspective, the whole review process is to encourage people with relevant expertise to apply and to try and keep journalists from claiming they're an expert reviewer. Because journalists have not all of them, a few journalists have a history of releasing IPCC reports when they're not supposed to. And so this is an effort to ensure that there is the appropriate expertise to look at the content of the chapters. Did you want to add to that, Sherry?
I just echoing everything that you said. I'm seeing the comments too, or the questions. Yeah, social sciences, super relevant. Lived experience as a practitioner in public health space, absolutely very, very helpful. Especially in the cities report, in the author selection process, there was a huge emphasis and effort on trying to include practitioners as lead authors to bring in that perspective. So especially for this report, we're acknowledging the importance that will play. You know, if you're there's a comment from a student, absolutely. Student review comments sometimes are incredibly detailed and some of the most helpful ones. So like absolutely students can do that as an individual or as a group.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
I was just going to flag to folk that the questions as they're answered move over into the answered tab. I'm sure most of you are well aware of that, but you can see the link, for example, in the answered tab. Some of the ones that have been answered live, we haven't typed an answer, but that's mainly the ones that there's several questions saying, do I have the right expertise? So the answer is, in short, yes. Sorry, Alexis, I just wanted to flag that. Over to you.
No, that's perfect. So I just wanted to highlight a few of the questions that, yeah, were answered, just so that everyone can hear the answer. So the IPCC has engaged, basically does not engage with organizations, but it's up to like individuals to volunteer to review. And then, yeah, early career researchers and students, yes, encouraged to apply. And any eligibility criteria to being an expert reviewer, sounds like IPCC asks for each potential reviewer to list a few relevant publications to ensure reviewers have the appropriate expertise, like Chris said. Perfect. So I noticed that there's a hand raised in the room. So maybe I will, hopefully this works, where you can actually say your answer now.
While you're looking for that, someone put in the Q&A that they don't see the answered tab, but I see 22 questions were answered. So Denise, I hope you're in the Q&A and not in the chat.
Well, and we can look into that maybe and circulate the Q&A document for everyone so that they have that. And I just wanted to add one thing to what Chris was saying that we haven't mentioned yet. She was commenting on how sometimes journalists can leak the report, for example. And so the first order draft is not public. And so if you sign up to be a reviewer and your credentials are checked and you become a reviewer, you get access to a document that is like sort of like stamped with your information. So it's private, like that's for your eyes only. If it gets leaked, then it's sort of like traced back to you as an individual. So it's not public. You have to sign a confidentiality or like tick a confidentiality box to be a reviewer. So it's not a public report. You only get access to it if you sign up to be a reviewer. Yeah, Alexis, over to you to moderate the questions.
And I'll add to that quickly. I don't know for this round, but in all previous rounds, every page was stamped, do not cite, quote, or distribute across the text. So it's very clear, do not cite, quote, or distribute.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, sorry, I noticed that there's a question in the room that I think that they're unmuted now. I don't know if you wanted to say your question. If you do, feel free to go ahead. Sorry, I think we're having a bit of difficulty hearing you. Yeah, I don't think we can hear you at the moment, but please feel free to send your question to the Q&A box. That'd be great. I'm also just seeing a few questions that I think have been answered where people are asking, they have this health expertise, but not necessarily climate change expertise. So does anyone want to further comment on that? If basically primary expertise is health, but not necessarily climate.
That's really quite hard to answer. I haven't read the report, so I don't know precisely what's in the report, or even vaguely what's in the report. The report, if this follows all other reports that preceded it, it's too long. And so there is going to be a considerable amount of pressure to get the authors to shorten the report. But that said, if they've got statements about health, population health, about health systems that aren't quite accurate, when they're talking about the intersection of those with climate change, even if you don't understand climate change, if you understand population health and health systems, you can help ensure that those statements are accurate. You can provide further information if that would be useful for explaining the point in more detail, and that would be quite helpful for the reviewers.
Thank you, Chris. Sherine, I see you have your hand up there.
Yes, I just wanted also to address that the report is definitely too long and you will need to go through it, but also for your expertise, if you are a health expert that doesn't have experience with climate change, that is why I would really urge you to take a look at the outline to see what the report should be covering. There might be topics that you find yourself interested in, that you can bring in some of your practitioner or scientific expertise in. And you can also go through the report and see what comes to you. But of course, this requires a bit of your own personal judgment on how you will be able to add to the report. And in the application, you need to add an affiliation already. If you have any publications, you add them. If not, you just say an A or I didn't publish. Yeah, it would be preferable to look at the outline first to see if you can bring something to the report in the end and to the topic of cities and the urban side of science. Thanks.
Thank you, Sherine. And then we just have a question. Are reviewers going to be added as authors? Yeah, so I'm not sure. It looks like Sherine, maybe you were in the middle of typing the answer to that. I don't know if you wanted to maybe just say it to the group.
Yes, for sure. Oops, I didn't mean to turn off my video. Yes, so authors are the ones. Authors were nominated initially by IPCC focal points in a very official process, and then they went through a selection process that was led by the bureau members of the IPCC. So the expert reviewers will be mentioned in the report as expert reviewers. So there is a very big difference between an author and an expert reviewer. The author are the people that have formally been part of the process. They have been part of the lead author meetings. They've written the report, and they've been nominated by the IPCC focal points. Expert reviewers is wider with much more range of expertise, and you will be referenced at the end of the report with the location, your name, your affiliation in the end as an expert reviewer.
If I could add to that, extremely rarely, but it does happen, a reviewer can become a contributing author. So not a full author of the report, but every chapter has contributing authors. And in some of the assessment rounds I've worked in, you'll get a reviewer who provides extensive information that you basically want to move directly into the report. And the author team, in collaboration with the CLAs and the technical support unit, will discuss whether it would be a possibility or not. It's not taken lightly, but rarely, as I said, it does happen. Sherine, did you want to add to that?
No, it's exactly as you have said. It's very rarely. So I would not expect like it is worth knowing, it is under very, very special circumstances, and usually it is initiated by the author teams themselves. So yes, that's all that I have to say regarding that.
Perfect. Thank you both. So we have a couple questions here. So one of them is, are we still in need of physicians as authors? And I think Sherry, you had indicated that you're going to answer that live. So I'll let
I
you go.
did. I clicked the wrong button and then couldn't unclick it. But so the authors have already been identified, as was said, but physicians and having users of the report review the report if they're active in this space and have expertise is very helpful. Making sure that we have helpful policy relevant assessment in the report is super, super key.
Perfect. And we just have a couple questions about group reviews. So just kind of asking generally, what kind of is the process for group reviews, and how do you register as a group instead of as an individual? So I'm not sure who, maybe
I
Sherine.
can help with that, yes. Okay, so I'm very happy to hear of this interest. The difference between an individual review and a group review, it's really obvious from the name, but also the difference is that for me, for example, I will sign up as an expert reviewer, and then I decided to do a group review with people that are with me in the same organization. For the people in the same organization to access the report like me, all of them individually have to also sign up as expert reviewers and receive their acceptance so that they would sign the confidentiality agreement. But then I, as a person who would like to plan the group review, will gather these people, maybe in a webinar, and we decide to look at the report together, and each of us have our own Excel. Because once you apply as an expert reviewer and you get access to the platform, you will be able to download an Excel sheet that you write your comments in, referring to the certain chapters, pages, lines of the report. So each of the people in the group review have their own Excel, and then when that group review is done, I will submit my Excel and the Excel of everybody in the group review with me. So the people with me in that setup of a meeting will not submit their own Excel. They will send it to me, and I will put on the platform, instead of only mine, all the Excels of the group that I was leading in this group review. And what we get in return is the fact that this was a group review, a master file with all of the comments of everybody, with all of the names of everybody, and automatically the system knows who the names are with, like their unique ID, etc. This might be a bit confusing, but what I would recommend is, if someone is seriously considering holding a group review, please reach out to me. I will write my email in the chat, and I can take this a bit further in discussion. We already have 9 major organized group reviews that the TSU and me personally have been supporting through organizations. This report will go through a group review on the topics of law, finance, indigenous knowledge and local knowledge, and on informality, solutions, actionability. So you can see there are major themes, and it would be better if someone is serious about it, that we can take it offline in another meeting. Thanks, Alexis.
And I could also provide it like just a couple of examples about how you might set something like that up. So I have observed one and participated in 2. So the one that when I was a lead author, I had helped facilitate a student group at the University of Alberta to do a review on the health chapter and other health related content in the report. And so basically I booked a room, made a call out for students who were interested. I presented on what the IPCC is and how to do the review, what makes good high quality peer review. We had some discussions on that. They worked in small groups to do the review. They did that over the process of a couple of weeks. Then we got together and compiled all of the comments into one document and discussed those. And then they submitted that, the one Excel sheet with all of their comments compiled. All of the students who were part of that group were acknowledged as peer peer reviewers, or sorry, expert reviewers in the final report. So that's one way. The other way I've seen it done, there was an APEX student group, which is like a polar regions student and early career scientist group. And they organized a peer review, a group review. So they did something similar, only it was with people from all around the world. And so they did it online. And so they invited different lead authors and bureau members to come and do like some training. So basically, again, to talk about what the IPCC is, how to do the review, et cetera. And then they did some group review sessions online and submitted their peer review comments under the Apex name. That's how the review comments are received by the authors. And then all of their individual names were acknowledged in the final report. And then finally, the last example that I've just observed is different organizations will sometimes do that. So if you have a cluster of people at your workspace who work in this area, you can organize a group review with them and do something similar, meet to discuss the content, compile your reviewer comments and submit it as a group. Your group name will be the one attributed to those comments, but your name will be listed at the end of the report.
Sure. This round, do you have anybody doing business reviews? We had that in the AR5 and those were terrific. You know, groups of businesses got together and did exactly what you described.
Yeah, go ahead, Sherine. Yeah, that would be super helpful, but not that I know of.
In this round, we're not doing, at least I have not initiated that. Maybe it is happening. But what we have initiated is actually a group review that will be hosted by all the major cities networks, which is relevant to the special report on cities. So it will be led by a Global Covenant of Mayors, C40, ICLEI, I'm forgetting someone there, but yeah, so that is the one that we will be having now. And within their experts they're inviting, there are people who are from the private sector, from development organizations, etc.
Thank you, everyone. I know we are almost at time. Just wanted to quickly highlight some questions that had been answered. How long is the cities report? It's about 5 chapters, but this will be finalized in later stages next year when everything's agreed on and published. Another really good question about if the report covers aspects of working group 1, 2, and 3 in a balanced way. Since we haven't had access to that yet, we don't know, but this can be a part of, your review of what you think is an appropriate balance. And then a question if we can cite others' work and yes, you can. Just be sure to explain how it's relevant. And then lastly, can you include evidential media reports? And yes, if they're relevant and high quality, you can reference them in your rationale for that. So I think that concludes our question period for now. If you do have further questions, you can always reach out to the same email, my email for this webinar, and I'll just post that in the chat. And then I'll just pass it off to Rachel, I think, to close us off there.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Sherry. Thanks, Sherine, for all of your insights. Thanks, Alexis, for organizing and hosting. I'm just going to do a quick kind of summary. Who can be an expert reviewer? You, in short. So please join up. We had lots of questions. Can I be one? The answer is yes. How do I sign up? We've given the link a couple of times in the Q&A, so please have a look there. Also, if you Google it, you'll find it really easily. When can I sign up? Registration's open now. The date you need to remember is that the deadline is the 30th of November. So you have to register before the 30th of November. The review is between the 17th of October, i.e. in a couple of days, and the 12th of December. So that's the second deadline you need to remember. The 12th of December is when you have to have your comments by. Then just a summary of kind of what folks' advice was. There's quite a lot. So do start with the outline. You don't have to review everything. Look at the piece that your expertise relates to. Secondly, think about, do you understand it? As an author, would I have written it like that? As a reader, does it make sense to me? And thirdly, in terms of the most helpful advice, be specific. Please provide references, not just your own, other people's. Provide pages, provide justification, and a DOI. Do not worry about grammar. That's not helpful and it's not needed. Do think about the quantity. Is it too much information in text? Is it too little information in text? Is something missing completely? And then really importantly, say what you like. If it's something that you think is good, flag that, because there's going to be things that are edited out. So if you want to see it stay in, say you like it. And then pay attention to the figures. The figures are going to be super important. So please look at those and review those as well. And I'll end there and just thank again our panelists, not just for their time today, but you're all absolute heroes for supporting this process. So thank you so much to you all. Everyone online, please sign up to be a reviewer. Thanks for joining us. And let's see if we can get more health evidence in as helpful a way as possible in the special report on cities. Thanks, everyone.